Hey guys, it's Graham. What's cracking? I am back from vacation and I could talk a lot about the trip itself, and maybe I will. There was a book that I read, what was it, Death Valley in 49? Maybe I haven't read it yet. Maybe it's on the list and it's just in a similar vein. I feel like when I went to see the Grand Canyon, I was like, didn't I read a book about this or don't I have a book to read about this? I don't know. When I get to it, I will eventually share it again and post up some of my pictures. But what I mostly want to talk to you guys about this morning is movies, in the specific vein of remakes. Because we have been in remake, reboot, sequel hell for a very long time, and it's only gotten more and more intense. I remember walking around in the summer of 2001 with a then girlfriend, pseudo girlfriend. We'd gone on a lot of dates. We weren't exclusive, but whatever. Anyway, the Mark Wahlberg Planet of the Apes movie was coming out, and even then, I remember her saying, like, wow, people are out of ideas. They're just remaking old stuff. And that's only gotten worse and worse. Now, granted, we did also have a bunch of original things, or at least first time adaptations in the intervening years. But the big corporations are really just chewing up and spitting out established IP things. And as frustrating as that is, and as bad as that is for our culture to be so stagnant that we're kind of coasting and gliding on the successes of yesteryear, there are times when that has done well, that it has yielded good artistic fruit. And that kind of came to me last week when I was at my brother's house and we were just chilling and having a movie night, and he pulled up the 1996 Twister movie, which I hadn't seen probably since 1996. It's funny, I remember that summer. That was when I started seventh grade. And we were going to go to a Cheap Seats movie as a family. So it was stuff that had already come out earlier that summer. And I was 11, and no, I was 12. Yeah. And I didn't want to see Twister. I wanted to go see The Phantom again with Billy Zane. And, growing up in a strong Mormon household, like the quickest way to get your parents out of taking you to see a movie you weren't interested in was to tell them that you heard there was an F-bomb in it. And so I tried to lie to my dad, like, oh no, I heard there was an F-bomb in Twister. And he's like, nah, I don't believe you. And we went and we saw it, and he's like, hey, where was that F-bomb? I didn't hear there was an F-bomb. I was like, oh, well, maybe I misheard it, blah, blah, blah. Because I hadn't seen it, but I just didn't want to go see it. It was fine. It was cool. Well, then we watched it at my brother's, and he had the subs on. And no, lo and behold, like, you don't really catch it immediately, but the very first word out of Helen Hunt's mouth in that movie is the F-bomb. She's just kind of muted about it. So here I am, vindicated almost 30 years later, but I digress. Comparing it to Twisters, the Glenn Powell vehicle from this summer, which has been surprisingly successful and very well received, the original is not as good. I understand that it's well loved. It is a bit of a classic. I think somebody even said that it was the first movie released to DVD in the United States. I don't know if that's true or not. It just shows you where it is on the cultural cutting edge of technology from back then. It was cool for its time, but it's one of those that it hasn't aged very well in terms of its storytelling or anything like that. It exists in this interesting little space where movies in the 90s were mostly either like alien invasion stuff or natural disaster stuff. It was before the glut of superhero movies really kicked off. And it was also kind of in the heyday of, well, if Michael Crichton's name is attached to it, let's just greenlight it. Like, this dude was massive in the 90s for cinema. He had those Jurassic Park movies, and after Jurassic Park got adapted, they adapted Congo, Sphere. Timeline was a latecomer to the party, but it seemed like most of what he wrote for about a decade there got put into cinema. Twister was not a novel of his, it was just a screenplay treatment. And knowing that, when you watch the story and pay attention to the story beats, it's a very typical Crichton story. The characters are kind of loosely developed. They're really just experts in their field, and they only exist to represent a certain academic discipline in the context of a thriller-type story. The pacing of it is a little bit clunky. We start with this prologue of Jo, the female lead, as a child. Her family has to run to their storm shelter. They don't get enough warning. The storm shelter is kind of shoddy. Her dad dies in a tornado. And then we immediately cut to 20 something years later, 30 something years later almost. She's an adult, but she's not the immediate focus. It's her soon to be ex husband, played by Bill Paxton, whose character's name is Bill. And he has already been married to Joe, had the marriage go sour, is ready to get married to somebody else and to leave the old life of storm chasing behind. We've got to establish a lot very, very quickly. And as he's chasing her down to get the divorce papers signed, she and their former team of storm chasers are about to go test out this new technology that he was instrumental in developing. And he gets really, really excited. And he's like, all right, one more chase. And it's supposed to be the chase that also rekindles his romance with Joe. And he decides not to marry this other chick. All of this happens within the space of about 24 hours. They show up in the middle of one day. They go storm chasing. The storm chasing bit goes sour. They run into a rival storm chaser guy of theirs who used to be on their team and stole their idea. And it all goes very, very fast. You might even say it's a bit of a whirlwind story. And the reasoning for all of it, for the animosity, for everything, it's just enough to kind of technically fill in the blanks on a Mad Libs page to establish a thriller story of people chasing down tornadoes and there's some destruction and that's it. It was cool for its time. I'm not even necessarily worried about whether the effects have aged well or anything. All of that stuff was fine and cool and good. But if you look at this 21st century sequel / pseudo remake of it, overall the new one is better. The storytelling is stronger, the pacing is stronger, the characters are a little bit stronger, the performances are, either on par or slightly ahead. Granted, it doesn't have these iconic actors of their time. Helen Hunt was very well loved in the 90s. She was on that sitcom Mad About You, and she was a few short years later. She was in Castaway. She was big at the time, and Bill Paxton was, I don't know if you call him an A-lister, but everything he was in, he was just very, very, very well received. You also had Philip Seymour Hoffman in one of his uniquely PSH performances. Cary Elwes as a villain. All of that stuff was good and cool, but if you stack it up to the new one is better. It's not often that remakes really justify themselves beyond just being a cash grab based on brand recognition, but the new one, I think, was much better done. Another time when this was done well was the True Grit remake from 2010. If that movie hadn't been made, it was unlikely that I would have ever heard of the John Wayne movie from 1962, which I still have not seen. I'm interested in seeing it, but I haven't seen it yet. I'm sure it was good, and it was exciting for its time. John Wayne was a very successful filmmaker for decades, but I wouldn't have known about it. And more importantly, I wouldn't have known about the novel by Charles Portis if I hadn't seen the movie and really appreciated the caliber of its writing and its dialogue, most of which was taken directly from the novel. I saw that movie, it made me read the book blew my mind, and that was kind of my first awakening to I really, really love just exceptionally well-written dialogue and beautiful prose. You could give me an otherwise boring story, and if it's wrapped in that and the pacing is good, I love it. Ultimately, that's what got me through reading Pride and Prejudice. This is 100% pedal to the metal, balls to the wall, chick lit, but the dialogue and the prose were so well done that was fine. I recently, on the road trip I just finished, I was listening to, when it was my turn to drive, Anne of Green Gables. Got into that because we there was a kid in my son's homeschool group who's also into local kid theater or something, and he was in that, and so the mom invited us. We went and saw this little kids play of Anne of Green Gables, and as I was listening to it, it's okay, they're reading from the book basically for the script of this little play, and the dialogue is compelling. Again, 100% chick fic, but well done, and I decided I'd want to take a crack at it. I remember having to watch the miniseries or something in 6th grade, and completely female coded chick series, and all of us boys in the 90s watched this and kind of universally agreed that this was really gay. But I took a shot at the book and was like, okay, I appreciate this. It's unlikely that I'll read the rest of the books in the series, but this writing is so well done that I can appreciate it right now at this time. In the context of sequels and late remakes, it's like anything else. It can be used well or it can be used poorly. And while it is most frequently used poorly and as a cash grab by studios who really aren't in the business of hiring creative so much as they are in the business of hiring ideologues, bards by any other title, there are times when it's done well and they do good with their work. True Grit was one of those, and look what all it led to. Top Gun Maverick is another example of this, and this is just an example of Tom Cruise being the right man to kind of shield his cultural legacy from being taken and turned into anything else. The man knows, for all of whatever his personal and social flaws are, whatever the hell you want to make of that, the man knows how to do good entertainment, even great entertainment. And Maverick is one of those that I would hold up to the original Top Gun and say, yeah, I mean, you give me an option to watch either of these, I'm going to watch the second one. It didn't subvert or change or anything in the first one. It was a worthy sequel to it with incredible production values and a very strong, heartfelt story. I understand, like, military guys would watch it and be like, oh, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong, whatever. We're watching a movie and we're having a damn fine time doing it. You have a responsibility as a cultural steward, if you're going to bank on something like that, to do it justice. Say you're a writer that gets pulled in to make a late sequel to something, Twister or whatever. Respect what came before and do the absolute best job that you can. Don't make it about you. Don't even necessarily make it about the time that you live in. Just make it about a great story, great art, whatever. Like, have a reason for doing it other than just, oh, well, got to make a few dollars here and people know what this is, so let's cash in on it. Those are my thoughts on sequels, remakes, etc. Let me know what you guys think. Is there another example of a remake or a sequel overshadowing its original, or at least doing such an excellent job that you wouldn't discount it against its original? Let me know in the comments below. I'm at work now. Till next time, drive safe. See you out there.